keep stuff, so.
So it's not good for Greenfield.
May 1st.
Yeah. I remember my son in Pittsburgh when he built his home.
And then
He had a horrible time
permits about 98
passing
ish, yeah.
2 drain fields on it.
Yeah. But see, back then there was no sunset
Like that,
rule.
there was water in it.
Not back then.
What's sitting there a day later? So of course he now has a mound.
You know, they almost made that a requirement in Minnesota, a requirement.
Yeah, sunset took effect in 2011.
They literally poured water in the holes, and the soil was very, very clay. So he had a big mound and a special thing. They remarkable. What they also do is made him put.
Okay, good evening, and welcome to the April 24th meeting of the Hubbard County Planning Commission and Board of Adjustment. To start the meeting, I will read the meeting procedure, which is on the screen if you're interested, and after that, we'll get busy with the agenda for the night. All persons in attendance at Planning Commission Board of Adjustment meetings are expected to comply with the following meeting procedure. Thank you in advance for helping make this a manageable meeting. Copies of agenda item materials are available for public viewing on the table located at the back of the meeting room. These materials are not to leave the table so that others in attendance may also view them. Please turn phones to vibrate or off during the meeting and conduct any sidebar conversations outside of the meeting room. Interruption or other interference with the orderly conduct of the Planning Commission Board of Adjustment meeting will not be allowed. Defamatory or abusive remarks are always out of order. Disruptive persons will be removed from the meeting. The chair may terminate a speaker's privilege of address if, after being called to order, the speaker persists in improper conduct or remarks. Written material concerning agenda items must be submitted to the Environmental Services Department by 3:30 p.m. on the Wednesday immediately prior to the meeting date. Written materials will not be accepted after this deadline or at the meeting because of the Planning Commission Board of Adjustment will not have sufficient time to review them prior to the meeting. Such material must state the agenda item for which it is being submitted and the name and address of the submitting party. Planning Commission business is conducted first, followed by the Board of Adjustment business. The chair will call the meeting to order and explain the meeting procedure. The chair will read each agenda item into the record and ask the applicants to come forward to the presenters table, state his, her, their names and addresses for the record, and explain his, her, or their request. The Planning Commission Board of Adjustment will then discuss the agenda item with the applicant. The chair will then ask for public comment on the agenda item. To facilitate an orderly, efficient meeting, there is a 3-minute speaking time limit per speaker per agenda item unless the chair allows the speaker additional time. The chair may terminate the speaker's privilege of address if, after being called to order, the speaker persists in improper conduct or remarks. When the chair recognizes a speaker, he or she may approach the audience podium and microphone, state his, her full name and address for the record, and write such on the speaker log, and then share his or her comments. The audience podium microphone must be used by the recognized speaker because the meeting is recorded. A member of the public may not donate his or her speaking time to another speaker. A speaker should state his or her comments and address the issue, not the applicants. All comments are to be directed toward the Planning Commission Board of Adjustment. Please do not repeat comments already made by previous speakers. The chair reserves the right to ask a group with similar comments to appoint a spokesperson. If written comments have been submitted to the Planning Commission Board of Adjustment, please do not read them aloud during the meeting as they are already part of the part of the record, and copies thereof have been given to the Planning Commission Board of Adjustment. After everyone wanting to speak on an agenda item has done so, the chair will close the public comment period on the agenda item. No further public comment will be taken after this point. The chair will give the applicant an opportunity to address issues raised during public comment. The Planning Commission Board of Adjustment will then continue its discussion on the agenda item, and the chair will entertain a motion on it. The Planning Commission Board of Adjustment may make a motion to pass, deny, or table the item. Once a motion is made and seconded, the Planning Commission Board of Adjustment will develop findings of fact for conditional use permit and variance applications, and then vote on the motion. Once a vote is taken on an agenda item, the Planning Commission Board of Adjustment will move on to the next agenda item. Meetings commence at 6 p.m. and continue until all agenda items have been heard or until 10 p.m. No new agenda items shall be considered after 9:45. The Planning Commission Board of Adjustment may, at its discretion, continue an item that is on the floor at 10 p.m. Any remaining agenda items shall be continued to another date, time, preferably the immediately following Tuesday at 6 p.m., and no further public notice will be provided for such a meeting continuation. The Planning Commission Board of Adjustment, through the chair, may modify these procedures prior to a meeting or an agenda item. Okay, we'll start with Planning Commission business, and we've got approval of the minutes from the March 27th meeting. So ask the board if we have any comments on the minutes there, any changes? Mike?
Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion to accept the meeting minutes.
Okay, second.
This is Timothy. I'll second that motion.
Okay, we've got a motion by Mike and a second by Tim. We'll take a vote here. Tim, how do you vote?
This is Timothy. I vote aye.
Ken, how do you vote?
This is Ken, I vote aye.
Mike, how do you vote?
This is Mike, I vote aye.
Veronica?
This is Veronica, I vote aye.
And this is Mark, I vote aye. The minute has been passed. We have no old, new business. So we'll move on to new business. We have a minor subdivision application by John Hadrava, part of Gov't Lot 2, Section 5, Township 144, Range 32, Hart Lake Township, Parcel 10.05.01100. Applicant is requesting approval to subdivide a 30-acre tract into two tracts, one 11 acres and the other 19 acres. Do we have the applicant here this evening? Yep. Step up and give us your name and address, who you are, and tell
My
us
name's
what.
Greg Yates. I'm the authorized agent for John Hadrava.
Okay. Just want to give us a little explanation for the board and what you want to do here.
John is looking to do a lot split. He didn't want all of the acreage, and he's just looking to sell 10 acres.
Okay,
Yeah, that's
all right,
all there is to it.
okay, simple enough. Any questions by my board here about this?
I have, this is Timothy. Eric, a question, that 5 acre or a 5-year limit restarts just by this amendment? Not from the original subdivision date? I mean, for that 5-year window?
Eric speaking, the 5-year window would be if they were going to do this through an administrative subdivision again, but the ordinance encourages and allows, if you've done a administrative subdivision and you want to further subdivide within that 5-year period, that you have the option of doing that through either a minor subdivision or a plat. So that's the reason for the minor subdivision.
Okay, thanks.
I think Tim's question was, the original administrative subdivision was in 18, and then an amendment in 22. Is it the 22 date that sets the 5-year time frame?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, is that what, yeah, okay.
Any other questions? We gotta do public comment. Eric, this is Mark, do we need public comment on this? Okay, I'm gonna open for public comment. And seeing none, we'll close public comment. Any other questions or concerns, or anybody ready to make a motion?
For the record, the staff report indicates that both of these tracts, subtracts, meet size, road access, septic, and width requirements, and therefore there are no nonconformances.
Ken?
I'd like a motion that we accept the application.
This is Mark, I'll second that motion. Take a vote, excuse me, a vote here. Tim, how do you vote?
Timothy, I vote aye.
Ken, how do you vote?
Vote aye.
Mike, how do you vote?
It's Mike, I vote aye.
Veronica, how do you vote?
This is Veronica, I vote aye.
And this is Mark. I vote aye. Your motion's passed.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, that concludes our planning commission business. We'll move on to the Board of Adjustment business. It looks like we have no minutes to approve from the last meeting, so we'll move on to old business, which is an amended variance application 1-V-23 by Terry and Nadean Inman, part of the south one half of Gov't Lot 4, Section 5, Township 143, Range 32, Lakeport Township on Garfield Lake, a recreational development lake, Parcel 19.05.01000. Applicants are requesting new variances from Part 1, Section 702 of the Shoreland Management Ordinance for a proposed lakeward addition to a non-conforming residence that does not comply with the 100-foot ordinary high water mark structure setback, and a proposed lakeside deck on said structure. Part 2, Section 502.2 of the Shoreland Management Ordinance for a proposed detached garage to be located within the 100-foot ordinary high water structure setback and the shore impact zone, and Section 903 of the Shoreland Management Ordinance for an accompanying proposed lakeward expansion of a driveway located within the 100-foot ordinary high water setback, and Part 3, Section 502.2 of the Shoreland Management Ordinance for a proposed accessory structure to be located within the 10-foot side and rear setback line setbacks. Looks like we have our applicant up here already, so if you'd give us your name and address for the record, and then tell us again what you'd like to do.
Good evening. Thanks again for considering our variance request. My name is Terry Inman. Our permanent address is 1378 Central Avenue North, Lakeport, Minnesota. The reason for our variance request is to make our home more suitable, as we recently moved to our cabin, which is now our permanent home. And the variance requests are due to the practical difficulty of our lot size and shape. Since our meeting in February, we have taken the board's feedback of reducing the garage size and building it further to the south to gain distance from the ordinary high water mark. By doing this, it also moves us to a more gradual slope to the lake. We also scaled back the addition and deck size to be further from the ordinary high water mark. We removed the garden shed, small fire pit wood shed, and the 10x10 canvas shed from the property. The 2019 wood shed was moved to the south side of the property, south side of the house, in the area that does not require a variance, and we obtained a land use permit for it. So part 1 and 2, the original garage request was 26 by 50 and 20 feet off the ordinary high water mark. We are now proposing to build a 24 by 34 garage to be 36 from the ordinary high water mark. The garage would be used for our vehicles, workshop, and tools. This would require a variance to be 36 feet from the ordinary high water mark. We also scaled down the size of our addition from a 10 by 16 mudroom to a 12 by 12 mudroom, and reducing the size of the porch from 18 by 18 to 14 by 16. By reducing the addition, it would require a variance to be 64 feet from the ordinary high water mark instead of 60. The deck was also reduced from a size of 18 by 30 to 12 by 32 and would be 66 feet from the ordinary high water mark instead of 60 in the initial request. We are requesting a variance to move the 1999 woodshed to be 1 foot off the south property line and 1 foot off the west property line, contingent on the garage variance approval. I know that these projects are concerned with rainwater impact of the shoreline and the health of the lake. To mitigate the impact, I've met and talked several times with Jake from Hubbard County Soil and Water, who is a water quality resource technician, and on developing a plan to control the water runoff. We discussed rain barrels, rain gardens, French trenches, planting native plants and seeds for a shoreline buffer. He also sent me charts on calculating rainwater, retention systems. Jake agreed to work with me if the variance requests are approved. We feel that our ordinary high water mark setback requests are within reason and would not disrupt the visual and physical landscape of Garfield Lake. There are numerous structures on Garfield Lake that are closer than the existing setbacks that are now in existence. We believe that a request would not impact or disturb the harmony or character of the neighborhood because there are neighboring dwellings that have ordinary high water mark setbacks, 30 feet, 45 feet, 61, that are to the north, and to the south of us, 31 feet, 70 feet, 50 feet, and 60 feet to the south. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Board, any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. This is Timothy speaking. Looking at this map that Eric has up, Mr. Inman, that 13-foot setback from that line, is that a property line from there to the edge of the garage?
So yes, that's a property line, and the reason why we can't move it closer to that property line is that's where our drain field is
Okay.
currently.
My other question is the state right-of-way for that trail is 100 feet, you said. Does that overlap that, or does that 100 or 50 feet from the center line?
50 feet from the center line.
So where is
100
that
feet wide.
according to that property line? Because it wasn't marked when we were out there. I was just wondering.
So you're wondering where the 50 feet is? So like where that back of that shed is the existing shed from 1999 is right in that area.
Right about 50
Yep.
feet there. So do we have an ordinance for state trail right-of-way setback?
Eric speaking, the edge of that right-of-way is the rear lot line for the Inman's property, so the 13 feet would be also the setback from that right-of-way.
Okay, thanks.
I didn't
There-
hear the answer to that.
There's something else I'd like to address too, as far as the septic. One of the concerns I know too, as far as an alternative spot for the septic system, when I talked to Absolute Septic, they talked about one thing that can be done is where if our septic did fail at one time or another, that they could dig out the existing drain field and put it there, which he said would be expensive, but it's possible. And he said the other thing is to go behind the garage to the north. That'd be alternative also, so.
Okay, go ahead,
I
Ken.
want to come back to Tim saying, the property line is the solid line that goes along 13 feet and then a foot by your shed. What's the 25-foot easement?
So, the lot to the south of us was the end of the road, so the easement gained this property into our property and passed so we get into our property.
Or the
And
road-
that
for the
was,
road- For the road?
yes, that easement was there in, we got that in 1994 from the DNR. So it's 25-foot wide.
So back, where is the 50-foot easement line from the trail relative to your property line? I didn't hear the answer. Your-
It's the same as that property line, Ken.
Same as the property.
So that's the, okay, so the property line and the 50-foot easement line are the same, okay.
Go ahead, Mike.
This is Mike. I have some historical questions, I guess. There was a 1979 variance, and it appears, and this is to you, Eric, that it wasn't acted upon and permit wasn't pulled until 98. And I see no other information about a deck. It just said a setback for the house. Can you clarify for me what the setback was, and was that just for the house? And if that's true, how did the deck impact on that, and how was that deck built? I saw no permit on that.
I'll pull up the permit application for you.
does say 6-foot porch.
Does that look like it shows a deck there? Is that,
The sketch that's on the screen for the permit application shows the
6 foot.
6-foot porch included.
And have we verified that the 84 feet or the 82 feet, depending on the corner we're referring to, does reflect the porch included?
Staff hasn't been able to verify the setback, partly due to the winter when the application was submitted, and then it isn't always, it's not standard practice that we do that. It's only case specific where there would be a reason for us to do that, so.
So right now, we're operating under that deck is, one corner is 84 and the other is 82, and that's what the permit allowed?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Without those setbacks having been verified.
Yeah, right, I understand that.
Any other questions? So I have a question for Eric. Eric, and I think maybe you just answered this. You haven't been out and flagged, say, any setbacks out there right now. We didn't see any the other day on Lot View. So these dimensions that we're seeing here are yours, Mr. Inman, as far as you're giving us these setbacks?
That's correct.
Okay.
Correct.
All right.
This is Veronica speaking. Can I jump in
Yep, you
real
can,
quick
Veronica.
about the deck again?
Yep.
So we've established that the 6x32 portion of the deck was included in the permit. What about the little extension that you placed on that corner? Did you get a permit for that
I
piece?
did not.
And what size is it?
That is, like 5.5 or 6 by 12.
The 73 feet on the screen is what we can measure with GIS. It's not gonna be exact, but it'll give you a ballpark
Okay.
house setback from the lake.
That little section.
This is Mike. Again, my concern is that we're asking for a variance to go to a certain distance, but without knowing where the actual house sits in relation to the ordinary high water mark, it appears this could be actually even closer than what's being proposed on this variance application. That to me is problematic. Also, while I appreciate the efforts to reduce the size of your mudroom, porch, and deck, bringing it down to, if my numbers are right, 752 square feet from 1,024, that's still very close to a 50% increase or footprint increase from the existing house. And so, without having those definitive numbers, I have problems going forward here. And then I also have some concerns with how that water would exactly be handled from the house, but also from the garage. It's a tremendous, in my mind, it's quite a bit of cut being placed into the upper side, the side towards the back, the trail, the back side of the lot, and cut there, and then a fill with a retaining wall, putting that retaining wall, and then how is all that drainage going to be handled when it's that close to the lake? Concerns I have, although the positive side is there's a lot of natural shoreline, and being able to see that was helpful, but still concerned about, that's quite a bit of water, hard impermeable surface being added, and where that water is, how is that all going to be directed?
Right, so when I was talking to Jake, we talked about, he hasn't been out to the site yet. There was snow until recent, so haven't had the opportunity to get him out there yet. And before we did, we want to make sure we get the variance. So we talked about, he thought when I was giving him a visual of the landscape as far as the garage, is the French systems instead of like a rain garden because of the trees and the roots that are right there. As far as making a rain garden, it might cover too much area. And one other comment that you talked about, when we moved the garage forward, we got out away from cutting so deep into the hill. So we're only gonna be, probably the northwest corner of the garage will only be into the hill maybe 2 to possibly 3 feet. Originally, when we had it back further, it would have been possibly like 8 feet.
And on the lakeside, how big of a wall are you talking there?
So the wall to build up for the driveway?
For the driveway and the garage, or is the garage going,
Yeah, so the garage footings would go all the way down to the natural landscape or to footings. I don't know if they'd dig all the way down for footings but anyways, it'd be a straight wall down. And as far as the wall, it would be approximately 5 foot high.
This is Mark speaking. So that wall, we see in the drawing here, you've got, I guess it would be considered a turnaround area there where it juts out 6 feet from the driveway.
Yep.
And you're planning on extending that furthermost jut towards the lake right up to the corner of the garage? Is that or would you take that around the lake side of the garage?
Oh, no, nope, it would be, so where the garage footings would be, it'd be just straight on with that.
Okay, so you're gonna have exposed block on that side of the
That's
garage?
correct. Yep,
Down to wherever the grade is there,
yep.
all right? And, I know you referred to this gentleman, Jake, I believe his name.
Jake, yep.
Yep, and he recommended a French drain
We talked about, well, like I said, he hasn't,
garden?
yeah, so we talked about it might work better for a French drain in there than a rain garden because of like I said, he hasn't been out there, but I was describing how our landscape was and stuff. But he said because of the trees and stuff, and far as to get a rain garden in versus the trenches, it might be easier to put the French trench in there. And he also mentioned too, and I didn't really understand this, where you actually go along the footings and you put rock and stuff in there. So basically when it comes off, you run your gutters to it right alongside the building, and then it goes in the ground there.
Okay. This French drain, I'm not that familiar with, I've heard the term.
Yep.
What would you be doing with that water collecting there? Where do you, a rain garden is simply trying to absorb it there.
Yep.
A depression, more or less. In this French drain, what would you be doing with the water?
Sure, so my understanding of the French drain, the way it works is just like your drain field in your septic system. So it'd go out there and it'd evaporate or go down in the soil to,
this is Mike, again, without details and knowing what we're talking about, I'm having a hard time wanting to move forward or being able to move forward with this. That's a considerable amount of water coming off there, and basically what you're saying is developing some kind of a system, and French drain, whatever, that's gonna act like a drain field. I don't know if that's feasible or how much area you need to handle, a 25-year or a 50-year storm, but without the details, I'm very concerned that 36 feet away from the lake, how much more you have to go away from that rock foundation or the block foundation to accommodate whatever this drain system is, and it continues to bring us closer to the lake. Without firm plans there, I have a hard time supporting this, and I'm also curious on the drainage on the house, how that would be handled.
so right now we handle it goes out to the south side, so the majority of the design of the new addition, there'd only be one side that would be on the north side, otherwise the stuff on the south side would go toward the south, and we've never had any washing out in that area. I know when you guys were out there looking at it, somebody had mentioned that there's kind of a natural low, and I mean, we can run the drains out further if you feel that's necessary. But I think as you could see when you were there, that the way the drain systems that we have, we don't get wash out with it because of soil and the moss, and we don't really get grass to grow in there. It's mostly moss, so.
Okay. Anybody else want to weigh in on this?
This is Ken, a couple things. I'm partially in tune with Mike on the fact that the dimensions don't add up to me. The drawing we showed said that the existing building with the 6x32 porch is 82 feet or 84 feet from the lake. You're proposing a 12-foot deck, and yet this shows 66 feet.
So it's because of the overhang of the 2-foot overhang.
Well, the overhang is gonna be over the deck. So the overhang shouldn't enter into, the location where the deck is. Got a house, got an overhang, you got your deck.
Yep.
And your current 82 or 84, is that the end of the overhang, or is it the actual structure?
No, the overhang should be 80 feet off the
Okay,
lake. Well, originally when we built it.
okay, so the structure is 82, the overhang is 80.
That's correct.
So you still should be only adding 10 feet then to the overhang. Because you got 2 feet underneath the, back to Mike's point, without a firmer actual measurement on where you're at and where you end up proposing, leaves me a little bit uneasy. Second point I make is, I personally am not in favor of extending lakeward any part of your living structure. Your mudroom doesn't, it keeps the setback the same, but the 12 by 14 porch, which replaces the porch you're gonna enclose, I think pushes or encroaches farther than I would be comfortable with. I'm not uncomfortable with the deck, it's not unreasonable for a deck, but in terms of living space, moving towards the lake, I'm not in favor of. I don't have a problem with the garage, because I think from water standpoint, Mike, I think that it's all natural vegetation, there's kind of a swale. I'm not so sure that there's any more runoff with the garage than there was, so I'm not as worried there as I am with the house. You're gonna have to do something, rain garden, some kind of water retention area from the north, that would be your northeast side of the house, I guess, there, which you've talked about.
Yep.
So that's, I'm weighing in sort of my
Yep,
thoughts.
thank you, Ken.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to weigh in on their?
Or open public comment?
Oh, okay, while we think about that, we'll open for public comment. And seeing none, we'll close public comment.
Yeah, this is Veronica speaking. I do have a couple questions for you as well. Currently, during lot views, I saw that you utilized some parking on the non-lake side of the house. There was a vehicle parked there back where your wood shed used to be.
Yes.
Or even in the photos, it shows that there's a vehicles parked back in that same corner. Is there an entrance by that, where the vehicle is parked?
Yes, there is.
Have you considered a mudroom on that side of the house? Because there's room where you park your vehicle.
Right. So we're 10 feet off the property line there. And no, we haven't considered that. We like parking ours closer, and that's especially in the winter and stuff, as far as having to walk further and stuff. The other thing is we're very limited for parking room out there to begin with, so.
We have lots of parking on your driveway. Your whole driveway is
Well,
parking room.
we
but-
do, but if somebody, like the UPS guy shows, there's really a couple spots you can park and there's no other spot to turn around. I mean, we are pretty limited for,
This is Veronica speaking again. I'm kind of on the same page with Ken as far as building closer to the lake when I would prefer relief being given to you by a variance with a rear lot line and a side lot line, building a mudroom or, enlarging your structure on that side, or even a small single-car garage on that side of the house, asking relief, seeking relief from the variance on there. I did have concerns with the septic, utilizing the area that you're proposing for your 24 by 34 garage with the septic, but you said there's some evidence that you can do a drain field further down. I mean, we don't have any of that written, we don't have an alternate site plan in front of us to verify that information. So I'm hoping that that's a possibility, that you do have an additional drain field space, you know, if this garage portion gets moved forward. But I am in agreeance with Ken that I think any lakeside additions, I don't really agree with, when there's a possibility that you could seek a request on the side lot line and the rear lot line for that same type of structure.
This is Mark speaking. A question for Eric. If this were to go, well, let's put it this way. We've tabled this once, is that correct? That we're working off that now. And I've taken into account some of my board's feelings on what they're seeing here. What options does the applicant have? Would it be possible to table it and have the applicant change up his application, or are we starting from scratch? What's your feeling on that, Eric?
Eric speaking. So based on the application date of January 10th, excuse me, statutory timelines would require board action this evening. If the applicant wanted to, he could sign a extension form to give us more time for other information to be gathered, but absent that action on his part, the board would need to make a conclusive action on the application tonight.
Okay, but he would have the option of signing that extension. Okay, and for me to weigh in, I'm just gonna tell you what I think about this. I'm not quite as opposed as my members here are on some of the Lakeward stuff, but one thing that had occurred to me, and I was going to just suggest to you, would you be open to the idea of that shed that is currently sitting on your drain field, of just eliminating it altogether, rather than move it? I'm not sure even where you were going to move it, to be honest with you, but
Right, well, and that picture that's up there shows in the south
that's, okay.
corner, that's where that would be moved, and we're asking to be a foot off the property lines there.
And Mr. Chair, this is Veronica speaking, just to give you some more insight. I'm not opposed to a garage structure. My only concern is if the 24 by 34 accessory structure is approved, what options exist for that alternate septic site? Would it be wise, or would it be, a possibility, a request before the permit gets pulled, that an alternate site be given? Would that condition be too excessive, or no? Tim, you can weigh in on
I'm
this.
gonna defer to Tim on that, just get his opinion on that if you'd be so kind.
Tim speaking. I did look at this, and I did look over the alternate site locations. I didn't walk around back where it would be, but I thought immediately he's got room to go further down before going to an experimental and removing the existing and just rebuilding where it's at if it ever failed.
Even though it gets more narrow and narrow from the lake and the water, we
It
still
does,
have room.
yeah, it does. And, in our general if we have a classified lake that's general development, we can be 50 feet from the lake with the septic. So that's without even starting with variances on a general development lake. But this is recreational development, so it pushes it a little further. But I'm just saying that I don't think it'd harm the lake going down there, because it's gonna percolate down. It's sand country around there.
you're saying that if he had to do another drain field, he could do it to the north? Or to
Yes.
the right, way back behind? He's got 500 feet back there.
Yeah.
You could find one where it would be at least 75 feet from the lake, probably.
And this is Tim speaking. I'm not opposed to the garage. It seemed to me there was the topography sloped up, you know. I know what you're talking about, Mike, and about taking care of that, but I think I'm okay with the garage and the numbers. We seen the flags. We seen how close it's gonna be to the lake. Myself, the numbers, we were there and seeing how far it's gonna be away. So I was okay with that. The shed up there in the corner, I wasn't okay with myself because I haven't heard anything from the neighbor. And if he was allowed to go 12 inches from your lot line, and he was okay with you being 12 inches, then I'd say I'd be okay with it. But with him being silent, I look at that as maybe somebody being concerned about that, so I'm not in favor of a shed being right on that line myself.
Okay.
Thought the neighbor at least saying okay.
Right, that's what I was gonna say, Tim, is at least we would want him to weigh in on
Sure.
that, yeah. Okay. So, Eric, is it fair to me to put this question to our applicant here about whether he would like us to take a vote tonight or sign an extension? Because if this vote is, goes against him, then anything he'd want to do would have to come in the form of a new application. What would be the criteria there, or the guideline?
The ordinance doesn't allow the same application to be submitted within a year of a date of denial.
Okay,
So any new application within that period would have to be different enough that we would find it to be not the same request or slightly tweaked.
okay.
Otherwise, he'd have to wait a year if he wanted to put the same proposal forward.
Okay. So my inclination is to give you the choice. I think you've kind of heard feedback from our board members here. I would caution you that if you choose to amend this and we table it, that you take to heart everything that you've heard as far as suggestions. I guess
I
just,
think we should spell out things
Yeah.
that we've, when he comes back, that we think we'd like him to have. I think we should.
how would we do that?
So,
Well, I mean, I wrote some things down here.
Okay.
If we all agreed on those and say, all right, when you come back, you have to answer these questions.
Okay, oh, hold on. Okay, so Eric, what do you think of that? I'm gonna give you,
I would encourage the board to either you act on what's presented or, I mean, it's the applicant's responsibility to come with their best foot forward. And so it's
Okay.
not the board's place to
okay,
tell them what you would
Okay.
approve. So
All
I
right.
would discourage,
you discourage that and,
Yes.
and take a vote on this.
yep.
Okay,
so before you vote, and what we decide to do with this, can we decide on the garage tonight and come back to the addition and deck?
go
This
ahead,
is
Mike.
To me, I believe this is written up as one, is it one variance or three separate variance applications?
There's multiple parts, yes, to the request.
Depending on what the board's preference is on how to act on this as a one, or breaking it down and voting on three separate proposals here.
I think we could ask him to come back, but we could make the statement that we're in concurrence, if we are, on his garage, and so that he doesn't have to do anything more there. From my standpoint, I would be okay with that, but that makes it difficult.
Yeah. This is Veronica speaking. Mr. Chair, what is it in particular that you're looking for? Our setback measurements?
Well, for me personally, it was the setback measurements, yes. But I was also hearing what the rest of you were saying, and, so I guess I was trying to be generous here and allowing him not to have to come back, but, I also recognize maybe to cut this off and make it clean, maybe we wanna take a vote on this application as presented, taking Eric's advice. I'd defer to that myself, so, is anybody ready to make a motion?
Well, this is Vari speaking. I will just give a little
Okay.
bit of information. Historically speaking, generally, the board does not approve accessory structures at a 36-foot ordinary high watermark setback, as it's not in harmony with our intent. This particular situation, the variance is gonna be necessary no matter what type of structure the applicant proposes. The positive situation that I have, that I can, say that I would be approving or would be in accordance with, would be, we do have an alternate drain field possibilities sites with the extra square footage that he has up to the north. There was a lot of tree line in between the 24 by 34 garage proposal and the lake, so it would be very well vegetated and screened from the lake for, view of the lake.
And the view.
Yeah, the view. So I'm not opposed as that particular part goes, but, so that's just my extra input as far as that goes.
Okay, this is Mark again, I'm gonna ask you again, I may be ready to make a motion here, we'll see where it goes. If I were to place a condition on, a vote of you removing that shed completely off the property, not to move it back to the corner, would you be open to that condition?
If we're able to get the garage, I would agree to that.
Okay.
So I don't know if we, like I said, I don't know if we can do this or not, or split this up, or maybe we just have to reapply for another application, but it would be nice to know on the garage to get that, it's hard to get contractors lined up now. I've talked to a few, but they're getting really busy. So it'd be nice to at least know on the garage if we can move forward with that or not.
Okay, and again, question for Eric. My inclination before the meeting started was I was gonna treat this as one application. I was not prepared to break it into 3 parts. So my findings developed were basically to answer for all of the parts of that. Do you think that's acceptable if I go this route?
As far as taking it all together as one,
Yes,
you
yes.
certainly can.
Okay, I have that prerogative to do that.
Yeah, and if the board were to table it, I would say that would be because there's additional information that you need to be able to make a decision that you're lacking at present, such as the ordinary high water mark. So those would be reasons why you could table it. It wouldn't be that you'd want to give feedback on what you would find acceptable for revisions to what's been presented.
Okay, okay. Oh, now you've given me more to think about here. Okay. Any other feelings on the tabling versus? Go for it. Okay, I think I'm gonna make a motion to approve this, application. And I will, at the end, state my conditions, of one of which is gonna be to remove that, shed that we just talked about. Do I need to present findings before or after I get a second, Eric?
I'd like to hear conditions.
Yeah, I guess,
And your motion,
Motion,
yeah, I'd like-
findings, and conditions first.
First, and then we'll see, okay. Okay, so, I'm making a motion to approve, I'll do findings, and then I'll do my conditions. And then we'll see if I have a second.
Do conditions,
well,
and then
I'd
findings.
make your full motion with the conditions.
Okay,
And then,
okay.
it's up to you on whether you wanted to provide potential findings for everybody to hear before asking for a second, or if you wanted to ask for a second and then do findings, it's up to you.
Okay, so my motion is to approve the application. the conditions that I'm going to ask for are, number one, the removal of that shed, whatever, 8 by 12 that currently sits on the drain field, removed from the property, not to be placed over in the corner. Secondly, I'm going to ask for a rain garden on the lakeward side of that garage to be placed there, and I guess there I can't give dimensions, but I'm just going to ask that Eric, would I need you to approve that rain garden plan, or would you, or that's not required?
I would rather the board spell out exactly what you want, because that's more than likely gonna involve removal of trees to allow
Okay.
the rain garden's
Okay.
installation.
I would say if you want a rain garden by the garage, that the size, location be based on recommendations for Hart County Soil and Water Conservation District people.
Okay, can we go with that, Eric?
Because they'll calculate the runoff volume for a storm. They'll decide how much retention area it needs to be. It takes out of Eric's hand. My sort of
I'm
thought.
fine with that.
Other than it might lead to a larger rain garden than what you would find acceptable.
He said it might lead to a larger rain garden than we might find acceptable.
That garage and the amount of heavy rain, my experience, because I have a garage about that size, and I've done the calculations, and a nice big rain barrel with a hose away from it would handle, I think I'd calculated about a 2-inch rain. So I don't expect it to be really large, so.
Okay, so I would just say that if he's got a, in my condition, I'm just gonna have to go with if you've got a person you're working with there that could, design and, size for that area, we're gonna go with that. So those are my two conditions for this. And the third one is, I'm sorry, I want Eric, I'd like ESO to be out there before any building would start and mark the ordinary high water levels there. Have you do that rather than what we're seeing here, so I know what he's proposing, where he's got them versus what you would have when you measure.
What are you proposing that if we agree to this,
Yep.
he has to build back
Well,
66 feet?
But
Is that what
that,
you're?
yeah, but these are his dimensions. I need your dimensions. For at least giving us the setback, showing the setback, so that if he comes up with something and all of a sudden we see that his estimate of where the ordinary high is, it isn't where you say it is. I think that's what a little bit I thought Mike and I were talking about at the start, maybe?
So if we measure 36 feet and it's further away from the lake than what he's presented, and then he says, I can't make that work, then what do we do? That's
Yeah,
the issue
that
with
does
going that
boxes,
way.
but I mean, that's my only, I don't see how to get around that, because I can't verify.
If the OHW is located, he's gotta pull his tape from there, and he knows how far away he's gotta be by his map.
You're saying if he would.
If
he
the
would-
OHW was marked.
Yeah, if it was marked, right. Then we'd have that to go off, is what I'm looking for, Eric. Go ahead, Mike.
Clarification, so your condition is that the ordinary high water mark be established by the ESO?
Yes.
And then the dimensions shown on this application have to be adhered to regardless of where?
Yes, because then he'd be going off his dimension from where that ordinary high is, rather than his own. I don't know where he got that. So I'm not comfortable with that. I understand what he's proposing.
This is Tim speaking.
Go
I see where you're coming from, Mark. There's a lot of different opinions of where to pull that from, the tape. Is it from the edge of the rocks right down by the water that's showing, when the wind is blowing the lake all one way? Where is it gonna be pulled? So he's only talking probably a 1 or 2 foot difference. But if he pulled it on a nice calm day and pulled it back from the edge where it dropped off, that's the OHW. I mean, I do it by calling into the Corps of Engineers, then I get an elevation and measure the lake and get the difference. But it's,
This is all done in the wintertime, I'm guessing.
Right, and actually, I mean, as far as the garage is considered, it's actually there. When I measured again after the snow is gone, it actually ends up being further away. So there's actually almost like a 2-foot buffer in there.
But if we're gonna approve this, you can take the existing structure and, as it exists, and add 12 feet for a deck, because that's what he's asking for,
Okay.
and 14 feet for a
Okay.
bump out. So you don't have to, I mean, if you're gonna try to measure and say, well, this is this and this, but it's still coming back to you're proving him closing off his porch, adding a mudroom
Yep.
and another porch with the dimensions
Yep.
he's showing and a 12-foot deck. If you
Yep.
specify that, why are we worried about the ordinary high water mark?
Only to say that we don't, I mean, do we know that the house is,
It's, based on GIS, it's not looking like it's where it's supposed to be.
Right. Based on GIS.
closer than it's supposed to be, or?
Yeah,
Correct.
by 9 feet.
Well, then
Right.
we need that information if you're gonna specify a
Okay,
number.
so then, yeah, that may,
Well, how much closer? 2 feet?
9 feet, it looks like.
Like it's
9
70,
feet?
it's already 71 feet rather than 82 or 70?
From looking at GIS, yes.
So when I was working with Demi, she measured at 78 feet. But that was also built 20-some years ago.
right. Okay, that makes me rethink this approval. Okay. I don't know that I'm ready to go forward with, making that motion.
If we went on the 78 feet, would you still make the motion if you knew it was 78 feet? Versus 82?
Yeah, but we think it's not,
but did-
we think it's
does that change this
73.
then? Yeah, he just said 73.
Oh, okay.
That's what I get with
Yeah.
GIS, which is.
But we
Okay.
don't know.
Yeah, but GIS isn't that accurate on the actual ordinary high water mark, is it? Or is there a,
It's close, it's a guide. Nothing's gonna substitute for in the field measurement.
but we were on site, we seen where his flags were, we know how close it was to the lake. That's where I'm still saying I was okay with that.
Just by the physical
We're not in the
appearance of
shore
it.
impact zone.
Okay, well, I'm not quite as comfortable, Tim, with doing that, so I'm not gonna go forward with that motion. Because the unknown to me, I wanna know. That's just my own feeling on it. So, do we wanna rethink tabling this, get these, or do we wanna make a motion? Somebody else wanna make a motion?
Mark, let me come back.
Go ahead.
Tim makes a good point. We were out there, we looked at where those flags were,
Okay,
okay? And if you were making a motion based on knowing where those flags were, the actual numbers are not pertinent. Okay? Because if he builds to those flags, which is basically saying a 12-foot deck and a 14-foot screened-in porch, they'll be to those flags as such. Follow what I'm saying? I don't,
Yep.
if you're
like
okay.
flags, you mean the stakes, yes, but I was going under the assumption that we know where this is. we don't.
And this is Veronica speaking, if I may weigh in. Even if you go by what your markings, what you said his flag marks are, and if he says it's 64 feet from the water's edge or from the measurement, if we're 9 feet off, then you add 9 feet to that or subtract 9 feet from that, then we're into the shore impact zone.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Because you're 9 feet off. Again, this is Veronica speaking. I have already given information or input that I am not in favor of
Right.
any lakeward additions.
Yep.
So I'm
I know that.
still holding that.
I can guarantee you that ain't 9 feet off.
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
This
Mike.
is Mike. Just to reiterate, I also am not comfortable with any lakeward without knowing more details. So as this stands and is presented, I would be not in favor.
Okay, would you like to make a motion?
This is Mike. I'll make the motion to deny the application.
Okay. And since we don't have measurements that I'm going to, this is Mark, I'm gonna second that motion. I'd want those dimensions, and I didn't understand that we didn't have them. So we have a motion by Mike to deny, and a second by Mark.
You want findings of fact?
Sure.
Is the variance in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the official controls? I would say no. With the unknown of how close that is to the lake, it could be anywhere from 55 to 64 feet. And with that, that's does not meet the criteria. Is the property owner proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by an official control? I again say no, is what's reasonable is meeting setbacks, and this clearly, everything within this is asking for an exception. Is the need for a variance due to circumstances unique to the property and not created by the current or prior property owners?
I have that one.
Is that a yes?
Yeah, I can give you guidance on that one.
Okay, if you would.
Number 3 would be yes, the lot's primary constraint is the lack of depth. It is 650 feet wide, north to south, but ranges from 42 feet deep on the north end to 203 feet deep in the south end. The entire lot lays on a slope, and the state of Minnesota bike trail runs along the rear lot line, so variance would be needed for any future structures as setbacks cannot be made.
Number 4, will the issuance of the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? I believe so. I believe based on other structures built on that stretch of the lake, it does meet that. Does the stated practical difficulty involve more than economic considerations? Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion by Mike to deny, a second by Mark. Findings of fact were presented by Mike and Veronica. We'll take a vote now. Tim, how do you vote?
This is Tim. I vote nay. I think he needs a garage.
Okay, Ken, how do you vote?
I vote nay.
Mike, how do you vote?
It's Mike. I vote nay.
Veronica, how do you
Oh,
vote?
I'm sorry. I'm voting for the motion.
Right, yep.
I'm voting yes. I'm sorry.
You're voting aye.
Aye.
Okay. Veronica, how do you vote?
It's Veronica, I vote aye.
Okay, and this is Mark, I vote aye. Motion, your application is denied.
Thank you. So we couldn't split that and make the decision on the garage?
No, the application as a whole was denied. I guess you would have to refer to Eric about how you could go forward from here with a new application. Is that correct, Eric?
So can I ask another question? So can we, if we voted on just the garage tonight, can I reapply for the? Okay,
We've already taken action on the entire
Yes.
why,
application.
Yep. Thank
all
you.
right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to new business. We have variance application 6-V-23 by John Stillwell, part of the northwest one quarter of the northwest one quarter of the southwest one quarter, Section 11, Township 143, Range 32, Lakeport Township, Parcel 19.11.00310. Applicant is requesting a variance from Section 4, Subdivision A, 1A2 of the subdivision ordinance to adjust a boundary line in a way that causes a conforming lot to become non-conforming with the 300-foot minimum lot width requirement. And we have the applicant, if you could state your name and address for the record and what you want to do.
Jonathan Stillwell, 38,500, 315th Avenue, Lakeport, Minnesota.
Okay, and what are you asking the board to do here?
I'm requesting a variance so we can get the property line straightened out, line variance.
Okay. Okay, any questions by our board on this one?
Just to state the facts, the only nonconformance with this application is that the length along 315th Avenue is only about 260 feet versus the required 300. But all other aspects are conforming.
Okay. I'm gonna just open to public comment here. Seeing none, I'll close public comment. Anybody have any further questions or ready to make a motion on this one?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I also have a supporting statement from
Okay.
the staff's guidance. Is the neighbor structures and related improvements were found to be located on the applicant's property. So the boundary line adjustment proposed as a means of getting the neighbor's improvements onto property that will be conveyed to the neighbor. So such a boundary line adjustment for this purpose is a very reasonable proposal.
Okay,
And this is Veronica, I can make a motion to approve the application as presented and adopt the staff's findings of facts.
okay.
This is Mike, I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Veronica to approve this application and a second by Mike, using staff's findings of facts. Tim, how do you vote?
This is Timothy, I vote aye.
Ken, how do you vote?
Can I vote aye?
Mike, how do you vote?
This is Mike, I vote aye.
Veronica, how do you vote?
Veronica, I vote aye.
And this is Mark, I vote aye. Your motion is approved.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, next we have variance application 7-V-23 by John and Marlene Weber. Lot 13, Pineland Acres, Section 33, Township 141, Range 33, Mantrap Township, on Spider Lake, Recreational Development Lake. Parcel 20.46.01300. Applicant is requesting a variance from Section 502.2 of the Shoreline Management Ordinance for a proposed drain field to be located within the 150-foot ordinary high water setback. And we have the applicant up. Could you state your name and address?
John Weber, 22382 Glacial Ridge Trail, Nevis.
Okay. And tell us briefly what you're asking to do here.
On October 20th, our septic failed, and so it was too late to do anything last year, but in the interim, it was thought by Environmental Services that we would have maybe 150-foot area where a alternate drain field could be put in. It turns out it would be no more than maybe 125 feet available. So on November 4th, Aaron and Cal from ESO came out and did flag 75 feet from both shores, because there is a peninsula that goes out. And Dave Hacker has prepared a plan that is beyond the 75 feet from the lake, which would meet the state standard. So we're proposing that it would meet the state standard.
Okay. Okay, any questions from my board on this one?
Let me just confirm, the place that the environmental services marked out does not meet the 150 feet?
No.
It does not, okay.
Anybody else? And if not, we'll open for public comment here. And seeing none, we'll close public comment. I'm just gonna, again, defer to one of my colleagues here about your feelings on that site, Tim, that they're proposing to use as far as your.
This is Tim speaking. In my opinion, by far, it's the most common sense thing to do is what's proposed right now. All the problematic going around to that other site, changing the plumbing, the slope you need for feedback, this site
Okay.
is the right place to go.
Okay. And my own feeling is, I think I agree with Tim. My question is number 3 on the findings. I simply did not know how to answer that. If I were to make a motion to approve, I don't know if any of my colleagues feel the same way.
Well, the approved plat created in 1980 was to have the septic location at 150, and no area exists
That can make that.
at that.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, this is Mike. I think this is the most common sense approach and the least disruptive, and we need to have something here, and I believe with the thought that's gone into this, this is the best proposal.
Okay.
This is Veronica speaking. I concur with my colleagues as well. This seems to be the most suitable spot for this, without having to change any, plumbing directions and such, so.
Okay. If nobody else is out, I'm prepared to make a motion to approve this application as presented. Wait a second.
This is Mike, I'll second.
Okay. And I'm gonna give you my findings. Number 1, is the variance in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the official controls as the new proposed site? Yes, as the new proposed site seems to be the least intrusive and most effective spot for the new drain field, and thus keeping it in harmony with the purpose of the controls. Number 2, is the property owner proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by an official control? Yes, it is reasonable to want to utilize the most practical location for the drain field, even if it doesn't meet setback requirements. Tim, I might defer to you on that number 3.
Yeah, the original approved plat created in 1980 should have, at that time, had all the septic locations meeting the 150-foot setback. And there's no area that exists on this lot, so it wasn't created by him. It is unique to this property.
Okay, thank you, Tim. And questions 4 and 5, I'll defer to staff answers for those. So we have a motion by Mark to approve this application, a second by Mike. Tim, how do you vote?
This is Timothy, I vote aye.
Ken, how do you vote?
This is Ken, I vote aye.
Mike, how do you vote?
This is Mike, I vote aye.
Veronica, how do you vote?
Veronica, I vote aye.
And this is Mark, I vote aye. Your motion's approved. Thank you. Okay, next we have variance application 8-V-23 by Amy and John Dubois. Lot 1, Block 1, Twin Shores Addition, Section 35, Township 141, Range 34, Lake Emma Township, between Lake Ida, a natural environment lake, and Loon Lake, a recreational development lake, parcel 16.93.00100. Applicants are requesting variances from the following provisions for placement of a proposed dwelling, lakeside deck, and lakeside platform on this lot. Section 502.1 of the Shoreland Management Ordinance to place a dwelling, deck, and platform within the 150-foot ordinary high water mark setback and in a bluff. Section 503 of the Shoreline Management Ordinance to place the aforementioned three items in a bluff impact zone. Section 901 of the Shoreline Management Ordinance to intensively clear vegetation in a bluff impact zone, and Section 902 of the Shoreline Management Ordinance for excavation fill in a bluff impact zone and excavation fill in a steep slope that exceeds the permittable volume. So we got the applicants up here. Could you give us your name and address and what you want to do here?
Amy Du Bois, address is 2864 Rivers Bend Drive in West Fargo, North Dakota.
John Du Bois, same address.
Okay, and briefly tell us again what you're looking for here.
Yes. We are, in December, we submitted made an offer on this lot to build a family home for a generational home for us. And it was contingent on us being able to build that home and septic with backup. When we got the initial site assessment, following that offer and visiting with doing an initial septic design, it was quickly obvious that the buildable area on that lot would not be suitable for a home, a septic with a backup. And so at that time, we extended our offer to June so that we could then build this variance application or research it, see if we felt we had a case here. So that's what we've been doing. Our contingent offer is expiring on June 1st. So we are here today to really go through and demonstrate that practical difficulty through the application. We feel that this is a reasonable request. We're building a moderate-sized family home, having that septic with a backup in that buildable area. We feel that this is unique to this property, and given the majority of the property is within that bluff impact zone, and it is on a natural lake, so therefore the setback of 150 feet back, that does not leave for much buildable area, but yet this is zoned residential, so that is our request, is for a residential home with septic. We believe it is in harmony with the neighborhood, as in the majority of the properties on that in-ground view on that area are within the bluff impact zone, and also this would be within that midterm range of what the properties are valued at. So not the largest, not the smallest home within that subdivision. Excuse me. So that, I will leave it up to John to talk more through the environmental, how we would address those environmental impacts.
Yeah, so after, getting the news of most of the lot being a bluff, I guess I'm in the business, so one of the things, we just do is kind of go through and do due diligence. What's a bluff mean? What are the challenges? Are we able to overcome those? And kind of do a gut check on, is that buildable? Does it make sense for us? And what should we do here? So we did that, and we really enjoy the area and the nature and those kind of things. So we were already intending on leaving a lot of this just as it is, right? And so the general purpose or the general position going forward would just be make as little impact as we can while adding the lot. I guess from an environmental standpoint, we are pushing hard to make sure the drain field stays in the buildable area, understanding that, you know, that's kind of the item that, you know, would maybe create the largest issue. And then the other being runoff. And we looked through 3 different locations actually here on the site. The first being the easy button, right? Just created on the buildable footprint. And in looking at that, I guess where the 20-foot setback lines up on that far north end of the lot, the challenge there, the road from the spot you guys parked that we're kind of proposing the house, the road goes up in elevation and the lot, that kind of flattish area, goes down in elevation. So the house, kind of where the foundation would start, is about a 14-foot elevation change. And I guess the challenge there is just accessing the house. You could, you know, it's obvious you could build it there, but where do you park and that kind of thing? You know, you can't park in the right of way, it's not our property. And by the time you get over to the house, you're already in the drop off. So you'd almost have to create a driveway down through the bluff to get over and access somewhere, you know, reasonably close to the house. The other piece of that is, at that point, you would be looking at, you know, a separate location, either in the 150-foot setback or the bluff itself for the septic. I guess that was my feeling in laying out those options. The next thing would be something closer just into the bluff on that flatter area, but again, you're in the 150-foot setback. You have to bring a road down to it again because you're far away from a good access point. So really, the location where you're seeing it is kind of the third spot, I guess, we really identified that was buildable, probably be least obtrusive, and that's something that we could make work and access. So that's how we landed on this spot. I guess, you know, like I said, researching things, a bluff, you know, we would be doing things on the lot after construction to promote vegetation, get rid of the deadfall, replant anything there on, you know, that 50-foot stretch or 30-foot stretch from the edge of the house to the next steep slope of the bluff. So we've got good vegetation, healthy vegetation through there. And then, you know, the access for the lake would just be a trail going down, kind of on the walkable path, I think, that you went down and checked out the lake. So we'd really be maintaining, you know, way down towards the bottom on that little knoll, kind of envision that as a recreation area where we'd, you know, throw bags and do fun stuff and whatever down there that would be outside the bluff and that kind of thing. So we'd probably maintain that a little bit, mow it and that kind of thing for a yard, so to speak. So. Yeah, other than that, you know, I'm in the construction business, so as far as rain mitigation, or, you know, runoff mitigation and all those things during construction, we do straw wattles, that sort of thing. I think enough, you know, with the septic design and everything, she found that there's enough rock out there. Filtered fabric's not a good option, so we've always had good luck with straw wattles along there, and that's kind of what we propose. For the structure itself, any, you know, the runoff, that kind of thing for gutters and whatnot would run around to the north side. We're going to create some impervious space to the west there, moving that berm back. We are proposing a concrete drive, but there is still some space before the road that would be impervious as well. So.
Okay. Tim?
Yeah, this is Tim. I have a question for Eric. When I looked this up and I seen on the tax statement, this is classified as seasonal recreational, residential recreational. And she said it was just residential classified as,
That classification has to do with property taxes, so it doesn't
it
have
doesn't,
any zoning
the seasonal
implications.
doesn't mean anything?
It's a property tax
It's
classification.
code for cheaper taxes?
No. No. Seasonal means it's not a permanent residence, so it's a higher class.
Well, thank you. Any questions by the board regarding your plans here?
I couldn't quite understand all the things he was talking, oh, I'm sorry.
Excuse me one second.
Well, just one piece of information, and that is in regard to the septic design. We've been awaiting an amendment to the design to reflect an accurate slope for where the mound would be placed, and we haven't received that from the designer. I know that the applicants were trying to get that information
Still waiting for.
submitted from the designer, but we don't have that yet. So the main issue was on the design, they had a 2% slope shown for where that drain field is gonna be placed, and when you look at the LiDAR, the elevation contours, you can clearly see that it's greater than that, and so we don't have the final design yet on that septic plan.
Okay,
I talked to the septic designer on the way here tonight, and she's been talking with Azura Bryan, and that handles the septic. And she said they arrived at an agreement for that tonight, something that that Brian agreed to could work. It sounds like we would have to do just a bit of landscaping in that area, but there's no restrictions in that area. It's outside the bluff. It's a buildable area, so.
Well, I spoke with Brian right when he left at the end of the day, and he indicated he hadn't heard anything from her.
Yeah, the final design, correct, but they had reached an agreement as to what they were going to do. It sounded like they had a number of conversations about how to approach it. So it ended up, it's gonna be a mound system, 60 foot by 10 foot.
You know, that may be, but I haven't.
Okay,
we
fair enough.
haven't seen anything yet.
so we don't have anything here before us tonight that we can,
And the reason we wanted that clarified was because the percent slope where that mound is gonna go is gonna impact how much downslope fill is needed to get the mound constructed.
okay. Mike?
This is Mike. First, commend you for doing due diligence before purchasing this lot. I find this very problematic, concerns with that much fill being brought in to a bluff area. I don't know how I could affirmatively answer several questions in the findings of fact. It just, I'll leave it at that, but it just seems every part of this, other than possibly the septic, which we don't know, is very problematic in my mind.
Any other questions?
This is Ken. I think I want to build on what Mike said. You look at this, lot is almost impossible to develop without major nonconformances, and it's not usually in our approach to approve things, especially new that are full of nonconformances. The excavation, 725 tons of dirt would have to be moved.
And exported.
Huh?
And exported. So it wouldn't
Exported,
be,
well, it's still gotta be done, okay. Point I'm trying to get at also is that this is not a conforming lot. I think it's 80,000 square feet required for a natural environment lake, and I think if you do the calculations, this lot is not conforming from that standpoint, and buildable areas should be 40,000 square feet, and best I can figure, there's about 5,000 or 6,000 square feet of buildable area. And it seems that somehow or another, this lot got platted on the basis that there was a small area in that northwest corner that is possible buildable. And so the location and all the nonconformances just make this very, very problematic, especially for the size of the home that you're trying to build. I guess I'm sort of saying is that this is one that if you put in place, there'll be all kinds of nonconformances, and forever there will be. So I'm not overly supportive of it.
Okay, Ken, thank you for weighing in. Anybody else with comments or questions? We'll open for public comment while we think about that. Any public comment here? You do so. Eric, we don't have a mic.
They'll have to.
We'll have to direct you to the table, to the mic, and ask you to sign in first on that log, and then, thank you.
technical issues tonight. The mic did not come down from the
Right.
ceiling as it's supposed to, so apologize for that. Thank you for moving over and letting him have a microphone.
And then if you'd have a chair so you can speak into the microphone, give us your name and address and your comments.
Yes, sir. My name is Dale Lusty. I live at 19637 Grandview Drive, Park Rapids. That's our house and lot is probably 2 lots away from this lot. My understanding that there's a lot of excavation that's going to be needed, and I was a concern that was wondering if that's normal to allow a lot of excavation. When I first purchased my lot, I just inquired about building a pathway down to the lake, because we're sitting in a real high spot. And I was told that we were not, we could build a pathway, we could add to a path, but we're not able to do any excavation of a path to get down to the lake. And this seems to go kind of, excavation for the house might be kind of a little bit counterintuitive. And my understanding is that one of our neighbors who lives right next to where this should be, that'd be Dwayne and Jennifer Thurkelson. And I believe they sent written comments in advance. And I just hope that they're taking consideration of.
Yep. We got them.
We received
We
those.
received those, yep. Anything else?
No, I
Okay.
just said, just like you consider their comments, that they probably have some more specific
Okay.
concerns.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you very much. Seeing no one else, I'll close public comment. Getting back to the board. Veronica, you have?
Yeah,
Yep.
this is Veronica speaking. I have a couple comments or things that I would like to address as well. It has been, information has been provided to us in our packet that during the preliminary plat application for the Twin Shores addition, the buildable area, as you have commented, is in that northern corner, that western corner of the lot that does not meet the bluff criteria, but here as on the screen has a buildable area for a more modest size home and septic system. I'm going to have to agree with you, as you've mentioned in your statements, your beginning statements, that you said that you, when you looked at this lot, that it doesn't quite meet the structure that you desire. And I have to agree with you that I don't believe this lot is going to meet that area either, because I also have some concerns with that much excavation. I do, again, appreciate your due diligence prior to purchasing, to seeing what your options are, because that is very wise, prior to purchasing. But I believe this lot is suitable for something more modest in size that fits the description when they actually platted this. So I'm not in favor of that. The proposed request, again, I concur with some of my other colleagues that it is very problematic. There's lots of different criteria trying to be met and trying to be squeezed in with these variance requests that just looks like it's kind of opening a can of worms and causing a lot of issues. That's just a little input.
Okay. Anybody else with comments, or anybody ready to make a motion on this?
This is Mike.
I can make a motion too, either way.
I'll make the motion to deny.
Okay, we have a motion. Anybody for a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Mike to deny, a second by Ken. Mike, would you like to give us the findings?
Number one is the variance in harmony with the general purpose and intent of fishery controls. No, the construction, it will be a major disruption of the bluff. Is the property owner proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by an official control? No, there are alternatives to build within the setback at a much more modest build. Is the need for a variance due to circumstances unique to the property and not created by the current or prior owners? No, this was created by the prior owners when this lot was approved. It did have a buildable area, but again, much smaller. Will the issuance of this variance maintain the essential character of the locality? No, when you're doing that much excavation into a bluff line, it is drastically changing the character of the location, and accept the staff findings on number 5.
Okay, we have a motion by Mike, and a second by Ken, findings of facts delivered by Mike. Tim, how do you vote?
This is Timothy, I vote aye.
Ken, how do you vote?
This is Ken, I vote aye.
Mike, how do you vote?
This is Mike, I vote aye.
Veronica, how do you vote?
Veronica, I vote aye.
And this is Mark, I vote aye. Your motion, your application is denied. Thank you.
Thanks for
Free
consideration.
sign.
So Eric, any miscellaneous tonight?
The only thing I would have for the board would be, today was the deadline for the May meeting, and so we've got roughly the same number, maybe slightly one or two shy of what we had for this month's agenda, so it won't be a large one.
Okay,
So
okay,
that's all I've got.
okay. So in that case, I.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
I just want to state that I won't be able to make the lot views next month, but I do plan on once I get the packet of traveling and seeing them independently. And I believe I will be able to make it back from my Iowa fishing trip in time for the meeting on Monday night.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Fishing in Iowa.
Okay, anybody,
openers.
No.
anybody ready to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
This is Mike, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ken and a second by Mike. Tim, how do you vote?
This is Tim, I vote aye.
Ken, how do you vote?
This is Ken, I vote aye.
Mike, how do you vote?
This is Mike, I vote aye.
Veronica, how do you vote?
Veronica, I vote aye.
And this is Mark, I vote aye. Our meeting is adjourned.
Yes, Ken, I go to Iowa